My ranch had been in my family for decades. The old barn was one of the few things my father had left behind. I never imagined someone would come onto my land and destroy it. But that morning, everything was about to change. I heard engines before I saw the trucks. When I reached the gate, several construction vehicles were already inside. Nobody had asked me for permission. Then I saw the HOA president standing beside the machines. Karen pointed toward my barn like she owned the place. She told the workers to continue clearing the property. I asked her who gave them permission to enter. She simply smiled and said, "The HOA did." I told her this was private property. Karen insisted the HOA had authority over the entire area. I warned her that the barn was not part of any HOA property. She ignored me and ordered the machines to keep working. The first fence came down within minutes. Then the bulldozer moved directly toward my barn. I could barely believe what I was watching. They were destroying property they did not own. The machine slammed into the side of the old barn. Wooden beams cracked and the roof began collapsing. That barn had survived decades of storms and harsh winters. Now it was being destroyed in front of me. I asked Karen one final time to stop the work. She told me the HOA had already approved the demolition. I asked to see that approval in writing. She refused to show me anything. I reached into my truck and pulled out my property records. The documents showed exactly where my land began and ended, but I still did not know why Karen was so confident. Then I noticed something unusual about the property records. One document contained an older legal designation I had never noticed. The property records referenced a federal land classification. I immediately realized this could change everything. I decided to call the appropriate authorities before Karen could destroy anything else. I made one phone call and explained exactly what happened. I gave them the property information from the documents. The person on the other end became very serious. They told me federal officials were being sent to the ranch. A few minutes later, several official vehicles arrived. Federal officers stepped out and walked toward the damaged barn. Karen suddenly stopped giving orders. She had no idea why the government had arrived. The federal officer carefully examined the property documents. Then he looked at the destroyed barn and the surrounding land. His expression became increasingly serious. Finally, he turned toward Karen. The officer asked Karen who had authorized the demolition. She immediately blamed the HOA approval process. He asked whether she had verified the legal status of property. Karen suddenly had nothing to say. Then the officer explained what the records actually meant. The land had a federal property designation that the HOA had ignored. Karen had ordered work on property her organization did not control. Her confidence disappeared instantly. The machines were shut down immediately. Workers stepped away from the equipment and waited for instructions. The ranch became strangely quiet after all that noise. For the first time that day, Karen looked completely powerless. The officer walked the property with me. He compared the official boundary records with the physical land. Everything matched the documents I had kept for years. The HOA had crossed a line it had no right to cross. Karen tried to explain that she thought the land belonged to the HOA. The officer reminded her that assumptions were not legal authority. He documented the damage and the unauthorized work. Karen finally realized how serious her mistake had become. I looked at the barn and thought about my father. I was angry, but I knew the truth was finally on my side. The federal records had exposed what Karen never bothered to check. She had destroyed a structure on land she did not control. By sunset, the heavy machinery was gone. The federal officials had finished documenting the situation. Karen left without another argument, but the damaged barn remained as proof of what she had done. Karen thought she was flattening an ordinary private ranch. Instead, she had stepped onto property with federal protections. She learned the hard way that paperwork matters more than HOA power. And I knew my ranch would never be treated like someone else's playground again. Like, subscribe, and tell US, where are you watching from?